Welcome to the Brain Gain Youngstown Leadership Series podcast. Each week, we'll learn from leaders who are driving change and making an impact. Now here's your host, the CEO of the Youngstown Publishing Company, Jeff Leo Herrmann.
So you know what it's like when you see someone all the time and you may exchange pleasant hellos, but you really never get to know that person and you just run out of time to talk to them. And especially in this COVID environment when getting together for a coffee or what have you is just a little more difficult. Well, the benefit, you'll hear me talk about this, but the benefit of having a podcast is I got the chance to sit down for an hour with Ted Schmidt, the regional president of PNC Bank here in Youngstown. And we had a great time. I really enjoyed getting to know Ted better, hearing his leadership stories and great things about his career. And like I said, I wouldn't have had this opportunity if it wasn't for this podcast. So I hope you enjoy getting to know Ted better today. I certainly did. And more good news to share, something that we'll be digging into more deeply here in the coming weeks. But we set up a digital divide fund. So we're working with the Community Foundation of Eastern Ohio and Western Pennsylvania. We now have a fund we're building to help close the digital divide. And we will once again share more details about this new fund. But as a listener of the podcast, you are special to us, and so we always want to share what's coming up a little in advance of everything else. So thanks for joining us today. Hope you enjoy this interview with Ted. We're here with Ted Schmidt today. Thanks for joining us on the Brain Gain podcast, Ted.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So I tell you what, the benefit of having a podcast is I've seen you everywhere. You're everywhere, right? You're on every board, you're at every chamber event, but I've never really had the chance to chat. So this is fantastic. I'm thrilled to have your time today.
Oh, you're welcome. And there's a lot of boards, so you're right. It takes up a lot of time.
I saw your list on LinkedIn. It's your board obligations alone must be pretty massive, right?
They are, yeah. You know, when you look back over my career, cycled through a lot of them, but the toughest part is say no. You know, you're asked a lot and you feel bad. But you know, my philosophy has always been, if I'm going to join a board, it's not to dress up a resume.
Right.
It's because you want to make a difference.
Right.
And so I had to say no to people that I'm really close to, but they understand. You know, you can only do so much. And I do have a job, a paying job, right?
Exactly. Do you have a technique? Because is it sometimes maybe, or is it a no is almost like a favor to everyone?
You know, I would say probably earlier in my career, it was a lot of maybes and mostly turned into yeses. But as I get through my career now and where I'm at in my life, I pretty much know where my passions are. And so if someone were to approach me, it's a quick response because I have limited time and I know where I can really make a difference.
Right.
So it's fairly quick anymore.
Right. So look for opportunities to move the needle somewhere where you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. The act of saying no is good. I don't know. Sometimes it feels a little hard or uncomfortable, but actually it's so helpful to everyone, right? Because firm no's are better than maybes.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
So looking, I looked at your LinkedIn profile really long. So as a child, did you think you'd be here today? Like, what did you want to do when you were a little guy?
It's really interesting. I'm very competitive, and I'm one of 5 kids, middle child, and throughout growing up, I always had to win. You know, whether it was a dice game, blocks, you name it, right? The one game that really resonates, our family, when we were younger, we loved to play Monopoly. And my older sister will tell you this day, he always thought he had to be the banker. And I look back thinking, really, I did, but I always had to control the money.
Oh yeah.
And it was, and they hated playing with me because I always strove to, my goal was to win, and everybody knows that you want to have Park Place and Boardwalk, right? Right. You want to control those. Well, if somebody else landed on it before me, my goal was to figure out how can I accumulate other properties and do a trade, right? Yeah. Or buy it from them and then say, hey, Kim, you know what? I'll cut you a deal. You sell me that, I will not charge you rent, 10 trips around.
Do you do any rev shares or you take percentages?
No, I cut them a deal, but after so many times, then they had to kind of pay up. And then they started realizing, wait a minute, once he controls the board and these deals are up, he's going to win. So,
yeah. I need some tips from you because we play the Chicago edition of Monopoly, and so my goal is to get Sears Tower and Tribune Tower. Those are the two premier properties, the highest rent right before go, right?
Yeah,
and then I go for utilities and transportation, and I don't like all the retail. That's my angle with the game. It's like, okay, take the retail, that's fine, lots of action, but I try to knock it out with utilities, transportation, and those two premier properties. So I find myself trying to be the banker and trying to crush my kids. So teach them something, right?
Fast forward, I'd never thought I'd be a banker at that point. But one thing as I kind of was going through middle school and high school, numbers were just so easy. It just was a natural thing. So I just kind of followed that through and said, if you're going to be good at numbers, what's the best career? Be an accountant.
Right.
And that's kind of where I went through and got my accounting degree. So it's, getting into banking was kind of a little different route. But yeah, that was the first thing my family always knew I'd be a banker.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, so you got an accounting degree.
Yeah.
And then got into banking. Did you do it from what kind of?
Yeah, so during my my internship opportunities at YSU, the local accounting firms interviewed everybody. So I got a chance to work when Ernst & Young had an office, Ernst & Winnie at the time, in downtown Youngstown. So I did the internship, and when I finished up my college classes over the next couple of years, they kept me on as a paraprofessional. And when I graduated, they hired me full-time. So that's, I started out doing a little bit of tax work initially. I liked the auditing side and got heavily involved with a lot of jobs that had different year ends, so I was busy a lot. And it was, 32 years ago, public accounting was a little different animal.
Right.
My wife and I were newly married, and she says, wow, you know what, you're working 70 hours a week, 9 months out of the year. When's it going to stop? And I said, I don't know. So my senior manager on the job left the accounting firm to head up the holding company of Ohio Bancorp, which was part of Dollar Savings and Trust. 30 days later, I got the phone call from him, says, hey, you want to join me? And that so happened to be one of my clients. So I knew the organization, the bank, very well, and joined there as the assistant controller. And I was a number cruncher.
Wow. Putting
together the annual reports and the footnotes and the 10Qs and 10Ks. And as 5 years later, through bank consolidations, Ohio Bancorp was acquired by National City Bank. And at that time, the only opportunity to stay in the accounting world was to relocate.
Right.
And that wasn't really something I wanted to do. Moved to Cleveland or Akron. So they said, you know what, we'll find a home for you. So they said, why don't you try going into the credit world? You know numbers. So spent a couple years doing special projects, teaching our credit analysts how to analyze financial statements. Worked on a pretty significant deal with the sales team. Got to travel to New York City on the deal with a very seasoned banker. And at the time, the gentleman running the corporate banking group says, you know what, I think you can do this job. You can sell.
Right.
I said, well, I don't know. I'm not a salesperson. And I made the transition over into corporate banking as a business development officer, and that was, I think, in 94, 95, and from there just, a lot of opportunities within the bank.
Well, see, the beauty of a sales career, and I myself have been in sales, there's the gong. That's a sales gong, no bones about that, is if it's quantitatively driven, the value is so clear. Right? So yes, there's influence, and yes, there's a degree of persuasion, but it's about relationships and value creation, right? And so that's even better. I mean, sales is a rewarding career for many reasons, but I think when you have a quantitative perspective, it makes it all the better.
Yeah, I think a good banker, people in my profession first have to understand the numbers,
right?
But then they have to know how to really relate and communicate to a lot of different people,
right?
A lot of different personalities. One of the, I look back at my during my college days, a pivotal class that I would say really helped me become a better communicator was the communications class. Ann McMahon was the professor, and there was a scholarship named after her today. She was ruthless. She was hard on us. made us get up in front of the class, critique us, beat us up. And you had to make that presentation until you got it right. And it was kind of a breaking point. When you got done with that, you were like, wow, I can do this. I can, So, it really taught you, even to this day, you get up in front of a large crowd. And I even talk to my kids about this. If you're ever speaking in front of a group, think of the group as being intimate.
Right.
A small group. When there's 600 people at a chamber event and you're getting up there and you're talking, don't think about talking to 600 people. First of all, the lights from the cameras, are blinding you anyway, so you can't see anybody. But you just kind of have to relate to having a conversation with that intimate group. And she did that very well.
No, that's great. So when you're addressing a large audience, do you tend to pick a few faces in the crowd? As you scan, you kind of land on people sometimes?
Yeah, you do.
Do you keep landing back on the same people?
Yeah, I mean, when you've been to the chamber events or United Way events, it's a similar crowd.
Right.
So you can pick out 6 or 7 tables that somebody at that table intimately, right?
And
you talk to those 6 or 7 people.
Yeah. It doesn't feel awkward. It feels natural.
It does.
Because it really, dials you into kind of delivering that in a conversational way.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's a good technique. I've done it before, but only for some reason. I was speaking once, and for some reason I just kept hitting this person's face in the crowd. I didn't know him. And I think they thought, why the heck is this guy looking at me? So I actually tracked him down after. I said, hey, by the way, you were just kind of in my line of sight. You were helping me by giving me a focal point. So nice to meet you. So that's good. Well, so as a child, you were into numbers and you want, banker, monopoly banker. Was there a leader you looked up to? Were you like a fan of Warren Buffett, or was it?
I grew up in a rural town, out in they call it the farm country. And early on, my parents really raised us to be very independent. And, there were no handouts. It was tough, growing up with 5 of us. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom trying to raise us. And if you wanted something, you had to, get out there and figure it out.
Right.
They'd kind of help you behind the scenes, but I can remember before I even had a car, get on your bike and go sell seeds.
Right, yeah.
I don't know if anybody, flower seeds and garden seeds. And, I started to establish some relationships with some of the neighbors, and just so happened one was a business owner, 2 of them were business owners.
Oh.
Led to doing some additional yard work, mowing grass for different people, got hooked up, worked on a couple farms. Just to make money during high school.
Right.
And what I've learned through those connections were just that you develop relationships with, at that time I didn't know these individuals had their own businesses. And fast forward, the one farm that I worked on, found out 10 years prior to me was somebody that a lot of people know in this community is Phil Dennison. Phil worked on the same farm, pitched the same manure, cleaned out the same stalls. And I look at that, and it builds a lot of character.
Right.
And Phil is somebody that I have developed a strong relationship with throughout my entire career. He was a partner at E&W when I was there, and he and I are really good friends to this day. So, individuals like him have stayed with me throughout my career. But just I've always tried to, in the business world, look at people I feel that have strong leadership skills. And in our world, you deal with a lot of companies,
right?
A lot of different styles, and you just try to, pick up on the positives and try not to pick up on the negatives.
Right.
Yeah. So there wasn't any one particular person. I've had a lot of leaders throughout my career in the banking world that I've worked for that I've tried to pick up on their best traits.
Okay. Is there anyone today you follow more closely, or?
No, not really.
Just kind of an assimilation of lots of different techniques?
Yep. I mean, we have a lot of great leaders in this community that I interact with, and I try to leverage, their experiences and their skills, but not anybody in particular.
Right. Do you have a leadership style or philosophy you developed over time?
Yeah, it's changed, over the years. It's obviously because of your lack of experience when, you get to a point in your career where you understand the difference between leading and managing. And early on in my career, when you start out, kind of was one of the guys, and you progress through the management positions, you have to figure out how to change those styles, right?
Right.
Change your approach. I'm very, if you take all these personality trait tests and stuff, empathy is always at the top for me, and collaboration. So not that I'm a softie, but I think the most important thing as I lead my team is building a good team around you, giving them the responsibility, understanding that ultimately I have to maybe call the shots at the end of the day, but
Right.
if you don't let the team feel like they're contributing and hear what they're saying, you're not going to get very far.
Right.
And so it has always been a very open door policy for me. Sometimes that can be a detriment.
Right.
And probably a trait that it's hard to shake is getting into the weeds on the deals.
Yeah, well,
You know
the numbers.
because
Yeah.
you're always used to being a doer, and then as you move through the different levels, you have to be able to delegate more often.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
It's
one of my biggest
hard.
challenges. Yes.
It's incredibly difficult to
Yes.
delegate because there are things in your bones, and boy, if only you could just transfer that knowledge, right?
Yeah.
What type of techniques do you use to lead someone down a path, say to enable them or empower them to make decisions?
Yeah. So my job now, I try to assign a lot more projects,
Okay.
knowing that I could probably on some of them knock it out, but also let them make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all made mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
and it's how you then coach somebody through that process to say, look, you know what, I see what you did here, did a nice job, but I would have maybe done it a little bit differently.
Right.
And here's why. And do you see where I'm coming from? It's always trying to make sure that they understand my viewpoint, and not to make them feel like they did it wrong, but just to help kind of build their confidence and their skill level.
Right. Do you notice, say, leading today in today's day and age, even post-pandemic, with you have multiple generations, multiple cohorts that you probably interface with. I think you're a Gen X, right? Or are you a little? Well, I'm not trying to. We don't have to. Well, we'll just say it. You're roughly, but there's two other cohorts behind us, right? Because I'm a Gen X.
Yeah, born in '64, so whatever that.
Oh yeah, close enough. Yeah.
I may be. I think I'm the last year of the baby boomer.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
I think you're right.
Then '65, I think may have. So I'm right on that border.
Right. So do you use different techniques to say motivate someone in their 40s versus someone in their 20s? Like, how do you interface with them differently?
No, other than I tend to try to learn more from the 20-year-olds.
Yeah. Right.
Especially having 4 kids. They're 25, 21, and 18. How they approach things are completely different. I even look at my 18-year-old boys that are, they still come to me for advice on how to type an email,
Right.
or send a text message, because they're not used to that. But it was interesting. My one son went and tried to interview for his first job, a couple weeks ago or last week, and when he approached them for the first meeting during the pandemic, it was kind of good to hear him say this. He goes, "Dad, I went to shake their hand and realized I couldn't." And I've always taught my children, all 4 of them, 2 girls and 2 boys, when you're introducing yourself to somebody, 2 things: firm handshake and look them in the eye.
Right.
Too many young professionals right now, and we do a lot of interviewing at YSU and get to meet a lot of students ahead of time at the career centers, and that's a coaching opportunity for a lot of these young kids too. We tell them as they come up to our table, you all have 4.0s, great resumes.
Right.
What I'm looking for somebody to join our organization is somebody that can communicate,
Mm-hmm.
and can present themselves well. And so we do a lot of that with the students. And I'll tell them during those sessions, I said, "Hey, let me help you out.
Right.
You know what? You're young. You're only a sophomore, or whatever. But this is why you're here, to learn, to meet professionals, not to just come up and grab our marketing material. But
Right.
we want you to interact with us." And some of them are a year ahead, so they still stop by the table. The second year they come back, you can see a huge difference.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and just to really encourage them, if you're going to be in the business world, you can't be texting people.
Right.
You have to be able to actually talk to somebody and have a conversation and have those interpersonal skills.
Right. It's funny, we spend so much time, especially today's day and age, certifications, training, workplace development or workforce development, right? Which we push certification, but interpersonal skills and communication skills, I imagine there are plenty of certifications out there for those, but that's probably something we need to be a little more focused on.
Right.
Yeah, because even Chris Allen, he's now with Ultium Cells. He runs their HR platform. He spends all his time on interpersonal skills with young, actually kids, middle school kids, all the way up through those he's recruiting, because that's where he feels, even though he hires technical roles, he feels like he needs to invest time in them to help them interface, because you still have to, sit down and see someone every day and chat with them as you're walking by to get your coffee, and you want to like the people you work with too.
Yeah, and I always tell my employees that as you're coaching them, don't be afraid to make a mistake.
Yeah.
We're not doing heart surgery.
Right.
We're analyzing financial statements. We're providing solutions. If you make a mistake, learn from it and own it. That's the most important thing too. Is don't own your own mistakes. You make a decision, whether it's me or anybody. Always do your homework, and if you're committed to the decision you make, right or wrong, or if people are going to agree or disagree, because you're not going to please everybody.
Right.
And feel comfortable and confident that you can, you did the right thing.
Right.
And sometimes you look back and you can probably say, I would have done it a little bit differently.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you do the homework to your best of your knowledge at that present time, right? Things change so quickly these days that a decision you make today, some macroeconomic factor could have impacted the decision could impact it 2 weeks from now. So at that time, own it and just grow and learn from it, right?
Yeah, and in this day and age too, I tell my younger staff and my kids, be careful what you communicate. With social media today, once that you hit that send button either on a text or an email, it's gone, and you can't get it back.
Right.
And once the most important attribute that you have is your integrity and trust. And once it's out the door, you don't get it back. So you have to be very careful and thoughtful about how you present yourself in a very professional and respectful way. Again, not to say that everybody's going to agree with you,
right?
But it's how you deliver your message.
Right. Yeah, it takes so much time to build that equity, but then you can lose it really quickly.
Yes.
Right. Well, speaking of that, we're going to talk about leadership mistakes, but first we want to take a minute to thank the members of the Brain Gain Coalition.
The Brain Gain is a collaborative effort, and we'd like to thank the headlining members of the coalition, including Farmers National Bank, Sweeney Chevrolet Buick GMC, and the Mahoning Valley Manufacturers Coalition. Also included are Eastern Gateway Community College, PNC Bank, the Youngstown Business Incubator, Youngstown State University, the DeBartolo Corporation, Simon Roofing, and the Mahoning County Career and Technical Center.
And we're back, and we want to talk about leadership mistakes, but I think we all learn from our mistakes. But what recommendations do you make? And say, for example, with your kids, you have 4, I have 2. How do you teach them to embrace? Go for it. Try to do something. Sure. If they make a mistake, there's an outcome there. But
as earlier we talked about, my parents raised all of us to be very independent. Think for yourselves. They never told any of us what degree we needed to go into, but they kind of recognized some of our strengths.
Right.
Maybe made a suggestion. I look at my 4 children. My first daughter, early on, probably back in 8th grade, she had a passion to take care of kids, to be maybe a doctor, and that's where she's going right now in medical school. My second daughter, her strengths were art. and that side of my brain doesn't work, right? I couldn't draw something if I had to. Would that be a career path that I would have gone down? No, but that was her passion, and she went away and went to art school and doing well. Completely different than if someone were to say, what do you want your daughter to do, right? And now my last two children, my boys, they were a little bit slower in terms of recognizing maybe where their passion or strengths were. And again, my wife and I don't want to push them into something that we want them to do. And it's, this over the last probably 18 months, it just kind of clicked for them. The one of them really good at math, wants to go down the path of engineering. He just can't decide, okay, Dad, what type of engineer do I need to be or want to be? I said, well, that's, what, we'll test those waters and we'll figure it out. The other son wants to be a dermatologist, just a passion he has. My son that wants to be the engineer took a shop class. How many kids take shop anymore, right?
Very few.
Very few.
You have to go to the MCCTC.
Exactly, and first of all, I'm thinking, all right, if you're going to go to college, why do you want to take shop? I look back when I was in high school, everybody took shop. Mm-hmm. I took singles living. Great skills came out of it.
Oh yeah.
And how many people could say they made a drop leaf table in high school 30 years ago, right? And it still works, right? It's still holding up. So he had this idea. He wanted to design his own project. He he has a lot of consoles for his PlayStations and Xboxes, right?
Right.
And I look at their where he keeps them. and says it's a mess. They're all over the place.
Right.
They're sitting here. I said, why don't you design something that you can put them all on? So he says, all right, Dad, can you help me out? So I started sketching things out, and he looked at it and I don't know, that's not what I want to do. And I'm thinking, well, that's what you should do. That's my vision, right?
Right.
So finally my wife says, whose project is this, right? To me, not to him. And I said, it's his. He goes, well, let him do it. So I just completely stepped back and said, David, here's what I want you to do. I want you to sketch it out, design it, draw it, run it past your teacher, and you tell me what you want to do. And you know what? He did it his way. And he's so proud of what he did. Now, he'll probably look back 5-10 years from now and say, boy, I could have done things a lot different, right? But he took the initiative and took that responsibility to learn. And if he made a mistake, he made a mistake. And he did. He may have drilled something wrong, but I said, no, it's wood. Get another piece of wood,
putty,
do it again, right?
Right? Yeah.
The other thing that he really learned out of these projects that he did, they were able to sell one of them. They had the option of building something. A couple of his buddies got together. They built a very nice bench, and they sold it. One of the parents wanted it, so they had an asking price. They backed out the costs, and he's trying to figure out what his profit was. I said, that's great.
That's great.
But then I got it was funny. He brought home an invoice the other day from shop class. I said, what's this? This is our supply bill, right? I said, all right. Well, who's paying for it? Well, you. I said, well, wait a minute. You sold the project, right? Yeah. You made a profit, right? Yeah. I said, well, who paid for the material? He just looked at me I said, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was. So he learned kind of two lessons. One, how to, think on his own and not be influenced by me. But he also learned a little bit about how business works. I said, I'm your supplier.
Right.
I paid for it. So you basically have a line of credit with me.
Right.
So should I write it off and you keep the whole, So he kind of like the light was going off in his head, right?
Right.
It's like,
all the things he's heard before.
Yeah, because now I understand. I mean, simple things like that, lessons in life that you just let your kids do, and and if it came out that nobody wanted to buy it, so be it. But it wasn't the case. He learned a lot and helped me kind of step back and let my kids kind of do things on their own.
Right. Well, hands-on learning opportunities, and that's where, with all of the pre-apprenticeship programs, and there are a lot of organizations going directly into schools at the middle school level, trying to get the kids to get hands-on and learn something, and maybe they try it and they don't like it. Well, that's just like back on saying no. Knowing that, I've tried it and I don't like it, is just as productive as never trying anything at all.
Right.
So that's interesting from a kid's training and development standpoint. Yeah, give them the opportunity to dig into something and let them learn, right? Let them go. It's hard to kind of step back and let them kind of observe, but let them just keep going forward.
And one thing I've learned through my kids, I I look at people that can play music they're gifted. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that if I were to go back in time, really try to figure out how to pick up that skill, because it fascinates me to watch, artists that can just pick up a guitar or play the piano. Just to watch somebody play the piano,
right,
is just amazing. And all four of my kids are musically inclined, and
oh, that's great.
The boys self-taught themselves on other instruments. I just have a lot of respect for people that can do that.
Absolutely, and that's a lifelong skill.
It is.
And it's never too late, though.
No?
So you fire up YouTube, get a keyboard.
I don't know, when I look at a sheet of music, all I see are a bunch of black dots.
Right,
It's it's a language, and
Yeah.
maybe one of these days in my retirement I'll pick up.
Right.
I can. I tried to play guitar when I was little, and I can play a little bit on a piano, but it's all by sound.
Right.
It's not by reading notes.
Right. Yeah, you have the ear, you can apply it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I thought it's funny, during lockdown, the pandemic, I thought, I'm going to learn how to play drums, because I want to be a rock drummer. I'm always tapping on something, but I thought, well, this is my chance to really dig in and play the drums. That didn't happen.
I think the lockdown has really changed a lot of people's, perception on things. And I know for us, having the last two at home, the connection that we have made with my two sons, because as you know, you've seen me out at dinner functions a lot.
Oh yeah.
Those 3 to 5 or 3 days a week, nights out being at dinners, you're not at home,
right,
interacting with your family as much as you would like. Over the last 10 months, it's been a standing thing. We have dinner together every night,
yeah.
And the connectivity that we get out of that is if you just never have that chance to do it again. They'll be going away to college here in a couple months, and you look back, and it really made a difference, I think, in our relationship.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's been interesting. It used to be the calendar. Well, where are you going tonight?
Yeah.
When are you going to be home? And now
we're home every night.
Yeah. And look, I hope we'll get back there at some point with the vaccine rollout and projections Q3, Q4 perhaps. But I predict it won't. I don't think it'll go back to full tilt. I think people do have a newfound appreciation for that balance.
Yeah, a lot of things I think will change going forward. Just how we interact, how we communicate.
From a leadership standpoint, really focusing on the region, right? So our Northeast Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, thinking broadly, you've been in this region for a long time. How have you seen it change and evolve, and are there recommendations or things you wish you could see happen that aren't happening?
Over my 30-year career, I've seen a leadership transition. Mm-hmm. Those individuals that were leading our community 20 years ago have retired, and people have moved, through the ranks, I would say, in the community. And I just see it's improved significantly over the years. I think things get done because of the people that are involved. Mm-hmm. It's not a machine, right?
Right.
And you can't blame anybody for your results or your failures, successes or failures, if you're not engaged.
Right.
And I see that our community is coming together pretty well, and I think there's still a lot of opportunity for more growth in that area, and that's why I get more involved in the boards that I do. And there are a lot of committed business owners and individuals, volunteers out in this community that want to make a difference. Mm-hmm. And I think that's that we're going down the right path. A lot of great things are happening in the valley, and a lot more needs to be done. And we just need to continue to collaborate and work together.
Do you think the mindset has changed? Because for years it was a doom and gloom mindset.
Yeah.
It felt like there was an overhang still, right? Where
I mean, I was in college when the steel mills crashed, right? And then, it's taken so long for us to get away from the old steel mill, crisis.
Right.
We're beyond that.
Oh yeah.
We're going to have our setbacks, with different industries impacting us, with General Motors, but we see a lot of good things now coming out of the Lordstown area, and I think we've learned to kind of get beyond that, because if we are not collectively out there beating to the same drum and reinforcing that we are on the uprise, it's not going to do anybody any good.
Right.
The history's there. You can't ignore the history. But my philosophy has always been, after, like we talked earlier, you make a decision, you can't go backwards on it. Don't go back and beat yourself up over the past. Look forward, and if there's still obstacles, get together with the right people and communicate.
Right.
And that's the key.
Is there something? What are you most optimistic about or most excited about as far as our future potential?
The opportunities right now with the, I think they call it the voltage valley.
Yes.
I've heard that, that.
Throw that hashtag around quite a bit.
Yes. I still think there are a lot of people that don't understand the significance and importance of what's going on with America Makes and the voltage stuff. It's for real.
Right.
And we have a great opportunity right now to really leverage that with Lordstown Motors, with Altium, Bright out in Trumbull County, getting connected to all this. I think there's a lot of great minds right now involved in it. Getting the university involved, and that's where we have to make the connection. We talk about this at the chamber level, making sure that first of all know where we want to be, and then how do we connect the workforce and the training to get us there. It may be from MCCTC, it could be from Eastern Gateway, it could be from YSU, because there's a lot of different skill sets that I think we're going to need to drive the success of that of that strategy, and getting that infrastructure and that in place now is critically important. And I think we have all the right people, great leadership at Eastern Gateway, at YSU, just get all the collective minds together to make sure that we're going down the right path.
I agree. I know it's all about execution, but the progress is real. I literally drive around Lordstown. I live out in Canfield, and I make a point to go through Lordstown a lot just to see. Oh, yeah. And the construction is real.
It is.
It's happening.
It is. And I look at Lordstown. When I grew up, I lived out in North Jackson.
Yeah.
And it was, my dad worked at General Motors, and when that thing was buzzing, we all know that we were always told we rode our bikes everywhere, right? From 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you were not out on the roads because the traffic was crazy, right?
Yeah.
Everybody, hundreds and hundreds of cars. Will we ever have that kind of traffic again out in North Jackson and Lordstown? Maybe not, but I can see that coming back.
Right.
In that area, and I'd love to, if you're out in that area, I'd love to see the traffic again. And I think you're gonna have it.
Right.
We got TJ Maxx opening up, and you got Altium down the road with their plant. So I think it's all going in the right direction.
Yeah, I think for years it seemed like everyone was living on hope and press releases. And maybe this is 5 years ago, but fundamental investments have been made, like America Makes, and the great work the YBI has done to lay the groundwork for it. It's literally now very, very real.
Absolutely.
And GM is staking, so they're allocating $20 billion towards electric vehicles. 10% of that is here, $2.3 billion in the Altium cells plant.
Yeah.
And so that's a very significant investment that's being deployed as we speak. And so there's a lot of potential there. So that makes us optimistic, potentially for a net inflow of population, because we're going to have several thousand jobs to fill.
Yeah, and if you look at the cost of living in the valley.
Oh yeah.
And you're an hour from Cleveland and Pittsburgh. You can jump in a car, and in today's day and age, if you want to entertainment-wise, and we still have great entertainment and great restaurants here, but if you want more, you don't have to go very far.
Right.
And we all know the value that you can invest in a home here versus the better suburbs up in Cleveland and Pittsburgh. So there's a lot to sell. We just have to market it and attract that young talent. My oldest daughter initially, as she started her college career and her pre-med, she moved down to Louisville, and now she's in Cleveland. And I'm hopeful that one day she's going to get tired of the big city stuff, right? And bring her talents back to the area here in Youngstown. And I think that will happen over time.
Yeah, I agree. Our quality of life is dramatically increasing.
Oh yeah.
So that's with the economy and the quality of life initiatives. Optimistic of the future. Right. So, do you have any, say, leadership tips, or actually, let's talk about some books first, because you mentioned some books before. So, do you have any?
Yeah, I'm. I'm not a guy that's going to sit down on the beach during my vacation and read a book for a couple hours. I'll fall asleep first.
Yeah, right,
sit too long.
right.
But earlier on in my banking career, I kind of gravitated toward Harvey Mackey. He had a couple books out there. Dig your well before you're thirsty. It was really explaining the importance of establishing that strong network and doing your homework. And he had a couple other books. So I tend to read his. They're easy reads. But I'm not like a novel type guy. I like to read things that are relevant to build my skill set and communications.
Right. Yeah. Right. You were in the military, right?
Yes, I was. Halfway through college, my brother and I at that time didn't know was going to be my best man at my wedding, but we were still all close, and we did this. We just said, you know what, we're not getting any younger. We really want to do something different. And I said, you know what, I've always wanted to, support my country and join the military. And so we all went off together, and I spent my active duty. It was, it was. I'm not saying fortunate for me, but I never had to go overseas. Right. It was literally a month before Desert Storm is when my active duty expired, and I was put on hold as a potential to go over, but a couple of my friends went over for the year. But one thing I will tell you that I really learned from the military. So I went in. If you don't understand the structure, if you go in with some college background, you can get promoted to a PFC, so 3 stripes. Well, guess what? That puts a target on your back right away. So you're going into basic training, and your basic training, and I was in the Army National Guard, but basic training is everybody.
Right.
It's full-time military, Army, and they don't distinguish. But you show up with 3 stripes on your shoulder, and they're always thinking you're special. So you're made a squad leader early on, and that was my first real experience with diversity. You have different ages, different ethnicity, different experiences, and you're thrown into a leadership position just because.
Right.
So that was rather interesting. A lot of challenges. Everybody, come at you, and there's you learn how to deal with a lot of different viewpoints.
Right.
And when I did finally come out of my training, my first unit was up in Cleveland, and learned a lot having that experience with people that I just weren't familiar with. I was out of the area, and then I ultimately moved back to the Austintown into a military police unit, and that's where I finished my career in the military.
Right.
Looking back, I'm so glad I did it. I couldn't do it again.
Right.
It was very demanding, but it was a good experience.
That's a viable career option. I mean, as we look around and look at our kids in middle school, high school, what did John Zettenbauer say today? Enroll, enlist, or 3 E's. Steve, do you remember what his 3 E's? He said you're either going to enlist, enroll, or employ. I think, just go get a job, right? Get a trade, so to speak. But the military careers are something that the training you get is unparalleled. Well,
I've always told my sons, if you ever, there's nothing wrong if you want to join the military. They're not going. I mean, it has to be their passion first. Right, I would never tell them that, and they may decide halfway through college it's something they want to do.
Sure.
It's just the experience is just something you just can't describe.
Right. Yeah. So, do you to close out here? Do you have any leadership tips you'd want to share? Or if you could, we'll bundle this question because we often like to say, well, what challenge would you offer to our audience, and give them something to chew on?
I would say really focus on your strengths first. When I was going through that leadership transition in the bank, my boss at the time says, we want to hook you up with a career coach. Because at that point I was very process oriented, to say, And he said, you know what, you need to kind of move away from the process. We need to get you we need to kind of change your style a little bit, right? I said, all right. So I worked with this consultant for about a year, and as we worked through it, it was, I told you about Ann McMahon and the communication skills. This was Ann McMahon on steroids.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was brutal. It was 8 hours each session, and it was like once a month, and it was in front of a camera. It was critiquing everything you said, your body language, and then how to deliver messages, always focusing on your audience first. So I came out of the that training session, and the report came back to the leadership, and one of the things that she pointed out is, you do not want to change his skill set in terms of process. That is a great attribute, but we can build and add the other tools, the communication skills, the listening skills, and so I always try to tell them, I look at my team and say, all right, there are their strengths and their weaknesses. Mm-hmm. Don't try to change anybody, but how can you get somebody more well-rounded? And I would just tell people, stick with your strengths, mm-hmm. but build on it.
Right. Round it out. So it's funny. Yeah. So often it's so easy to critique or criticize or coach on weakness, but maybe there's just your upside is probably better off building off of the strength.
Yes.
And then just kind of rounding out.
Right. You can't rewire somebody.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's, I look at my kids, and my the last two are twins. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everybody thought they're identical. Yeah. So they're not, but they don't even think the same. So there's a perfect example. They're both wired differently. Mm-hmm. So how do we build on that? Which one's better suited to do this versus that? One's very type A like me, mm-hmm. the other one's kind of laid back.
Right.
So you just have to, work with both of those and figure out where you're going with it.
What was the conversation like? I'm curious, as they're looking at what their future looks like, be it college, be it engineering. One is hands-on, built the whole entertainment unit. Was there consideration of, just I'd say broader, open consideration around what they're going to do with that skill set, or?
Not really. I mean, my other son is very laid back. Doesn't really, doesn't overthink and doesn't over worry. At least he doesn't outwardly do it.
Yeah.
So you just try to say, okay, what is he really? Where is he going to go with this?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
He has aspirations. To do something with. He's in football and he wants a kick. He says, how long will that last, Dad? He's already looking at how much Vinatieri made when he was a kicker.
Right.
I'm like,
right.
Okay, Jonathan, that's great. You want to be a kicker in college and make the NFL one day? Let's focus on your education first.
Yeah.
So find something because I don't care what position you are in football, whether your career's a one and done in college, 1 year and done, or you make it to the next level. Those guys don't play forever. Mm-hmm. So you have to first focus whatever you want to focus on, but go for get a degree, understand where you want to go. So each of them think very differently, and we're just trying to suggest what we think might be their best fit.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, because it's as much as you think something's a no-brainer. I have one I think is going to be a lawyer. So we have, when you're a lawyer, I've probably said half a dozen times, well, someday when you're a lawyer and you're arguing, typically he's arguing with me, and so what you doing right now? That's great, but use it.
So if you look at my, the business I'm in, we bring in employees that may join our team over the years, and they're great employees. Mm-hmm. They're smart, but maybe the role that we have them in isn't the best role, but that doesn't mean that they're out.
Right.
So within an organization, hopefully a business owner will look at that and say, okay, there's a lot of potential for this individual. Can we find another position where they can thrive?
Right.
And in the banking world, there are so many positions within our world. Most people don't understand. They think either you're a commercial banker or you're a teller, and there's nothing else to do. It's a massive organization, a lot of different facets. So my goal is, as I'm developing my team, is if they aren't comfortable doing what they're doing, or they want a different direction, it's really giving them all the tools, the connections, mm-hmm. and the guidance for them to enhance their career. Nobody wants to lose a good employee,
right.
But if you don't encourage them and build them up within your organization, they're going to find the same position somewhere else, and you don't want to lose them.
Right,
So
right.
I would just say,
Yeah.
really, invest in potential is what I put it.
Right.
Look for those individuals who have potential.
And try to get
and
them
build it.
aligned into that,
Exactly.
that spot where they thrive.
Yep.
Well, that's great. So just any last challenge you want to offer to the audience? So, we're all marching in the same direction now, right? The narrative has changed. There's a lot of potential. So anything you'd like to, parting words to offer to the audience?
Continue to collaborate and communicate with each other. And I think it'll really help the Valley out.
Absolutely. Well, Ted, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Really
Appreciate
enjoyed
it.
the conversation.
Same here.
Thank you for joining us today. We really do appreciate your time. If you like what you hear, please share it with a friend. And also, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast player. Those really do help us improve the quality of the show. If you have questions, comments, concerns, ideas, guests you want to recommend, hit me up on LinkedIn or send me an email at jhermann@business-journal.com. I will certainly get back to you. And I do have to thank, once again, the members of our Brain Gain Coalition. Without them, none of this would be possible. So thank you to Farmers National Bank, Sweeney Chevrolet Buick GMC, the Mahoney Valley Manufacturers Coalition for all of their support. And along with them, additional members of the coalition include Eastern Gateway Community College, PNC Bank, the Youngstown Business Incubator, MCCTC, Mahoney County Career and Technical Center, the great team out there, Simon Roofing, the DeBartolo Corporation, and Youngstown State University. So thanks so much once again, and we will see you next time.
I'm brave. I got what it takes. I am a warrior.
Thanks for watching the video. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that little bell for notifications. And also make sure to connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. For all of your business news, visit businessjournaldaily.com. For all of your arts and entertainment news, go to afterhoursyoungstown.com.